Hey guys, I'm really excited to show you a very cool workflow that I didn't see online yet. Maybe there is, I just didn't see. I'm not going to cover the texturing part, but I'm going to teach you how to create very cool organic shapes using a particle system in Houdini. It's not very often that we have something that would be interesting for someone who doesn't have any experience in Houdini. You're not going to learn exactly how to do that, but you're going to visualize the power of Houdini and why so many people start to migrate to Houdini. And more experienced users will also benefit from this very cool technique. So let's get started. So let's create a Geonode. Let's jump inside and create a circle. Change from primitive to polygon, and let's change the subdivisions to 36. Also, let's put it in the ZX plane, and just by the color we can already see that the normals are flipped. So I want to increase the radius to not 1.5 to 2, and let's rotate 180 degrees in the x-axis so we can have the normals facing up. I also want to change the arc type from closed to open arc. Now if we see the points, and let's have a look in the numbers of the points. You're going to see that we have the same position holding 2 points, the first and the last point. If we use a fuse node, we can fuse these 2 points based in a distance threshold. In the case, the distance can be anything because they're just in the exact same position. So now instead of having 37 points, we have 36. If we see middle click in the center, we're going to see that we have 37, and after the fuse, 36. So that's great. Okay, so we don't have any normals yet. Let's place a polyframe. The polyframe is a node that do a lot of things, like many in Houdini, but what we're interested in is getting 2 attributes: the normal, that is now facing up because we flipped, and the tangent U. The tangent is like the tangent of the circle. So imagine if you rotate a circle and you have a lot of points on top of that, they're just going to start flying through this rotation tangent. So my idea is that we need to get the velocity into this circle, and this velocity should facing outwards, but in any of these points. If we use one of the axes, the point in the other extremity of the circle is going to point in the same direction. So we need another way of having this facing like in a diagonal outside. So we're going to do a mix between the normal and the tangent. And the mix of these two is going to give exactly what we need. And we're going to use that as the initial direction, the vector velocity for our points. Let's do that. Let me just show you to visualize the normal into the tangent. And that's the tangent. So let's do the mix. I will keep the tangent U and also the normal. And with a point VOP, first let's delete the geometry. We're just interested in the points. So we can do it with an add node and delete geometry but keep the points. Okay, so let's do with a point VOP. The point VOP is a node visualization of the coding language of Houdini that's called vects. You can do that writing the codes into a Rango node that's called in Houdini, but we're going to do this in VOP, so it's much easier to visualize, especially if you're not very familiar with Houdini. So the geometry input has some global parameters like point, velocity, force, age, color, but we don't have the tangent U, for example. So the way to bring that is using a bind node. The bind node is like an import node, and we can import the attribute and tell what type of attribute it is. A float value is just a value that have just decimals on it, but the vector, we have like 3 different float values. So in that case, we need it to be a vector. So that's our tangent. I'm just plugging it into the normal, so it's the same thing that we did before. And now we do a cross product between this and the normal that is facing upward. The perpendicular vector for that is the result. So let's see. In this case, because the tangent and it is going to get an inverse of what we want. So now it's pointing inwards. If we use a negate node, it's going to be the same as multiplying it by -1, for example. We're just going to reverse it. I want this to be facing outward. So let's put the negate. And now let's do a mix between this and the normal. Great. Now if we visualize into the normal again, we have exactly what we needed. And in the mixed node, we can actually use the bias to define if it's going more towards the normal or from the cross product. And that's really good. But we don't want it to be in the normal. We actually want to plug it into the velocity. So now we have this initial velocity that is a vector with the direction that we need for each of the points. Great. So now it's time to start simulating the particles, and let's see what we get. So let's keep the bright UI, and I think before we start simulating the particles, I want to have some curve in the center that's going to be to attract the particles to it. So the particle is going to start shooting outwards from the circle because we gave this initial velocity. But what we need is them to be attracted later to the circle, and that's going to shape our particle system. That is exactly what we want to accomplish, the forms and the geometry that we want in the end. So let's create a line, increase the number of points of the line, and let's put a bend node. That's really good because the bend node is in the Houdini, I think 17 or 17 and a half. It got changed, and now it's much easier to work with that. It's very intuitive. So we need to be in the Y direction, so the capture region. And also I want to cover the whole geometry, but I want to move, I don't want to change the base. I want the particles to be, I want the line to be bent in the last 2/3 of this. Actually, not in here, in the POP network. The POP network is a dynamic operators node. In Houdini we have different contexts. Some contexts we work with surface, the other one with dynamics, and another one with materials, for example. So in the dynamics, everything that's going to be dynamic, that's going to move, that's going to be simulated, we use this dot network. The thing that now we're working in SOPs, and in SOPs we have like a geometry, and we're going to use a lot of different nodes to transform this geometry. We can fuse the points, we can translate, rotate, create these, add new parameters like the tangent U, we can change a lot of things. And the last node, the one that's further down in the line, is going to be the result of all this chain of nodes. So it's going top to bottom, and we're just going to affect that geometry in a very linear way. But when we go inside DOPS, we have a different system. We have a container that is something that's going to receive all this information in one side. And the other side is the in-source points that we're going to affect using forces, using other kind of transformations to it. And we have a solver because it's a dynamic thing. So the solver is going to solve everything and it's going to store in the POP object. So here we have the first input that we're going to source the points that we created. So we want all points and use the first geometry context. That means the first input in here, like this one, it's coming into the first one. We have 4 inputs there. So if we press play now, we're just going to start shooting forever because there's no force to do anything with these particles. They just have the initial velocity that we set. So there's no gravity, there's nothing. So we need to do a couple of things. If we do, for example, a gravity force and press play, they're going to be facing downward. In this case, they're going down very fast because the velocity that we gave was very little. We didn't multiply by any value, so we have a very strong 90.8 meters per second gravity, and now we're just having them to affect this. If we make it really low, for example, the part's going to shoot up first, and then the gravity is going to affect. So in this case, we don't need any gravity. That's not what we want. So let's increase our timeline to 600 frames so we have more time to work with the particles and visualize what they're going to do with the forces that we're going to apply to it. So let's start. We have this, and if you see, they're just a bit different, they have like a bit of jitter or a noise applied to the birth. So if you go to the birth into the pop source and change from positive to none, they're going to be 0. So every particle now, if we don't add any noise to it, they're going to be exactly the same. And for visualizing it at this point, that's what we want. So we know that every particle is going to react the same way in the starting of this. So let's bring our curve, and the curve we're going to need to bring the line that we created to be this. And this pop curve force is exactly that. It's going to attract these particles to it. In this case, we need to define, actually, there is nothing happening here. We need to define that it's not the stop, it's the second context geometry as we plug in. And now we can even see the direction of the line. So it's these arrows, these green arrows can show the direction. And we have these parameters like follow scale, suction scale, orbit scale, and inherit velocity scale. What we happening now is that the force of the particles, of the curve, is not enough to attract the particles. They are going to keep behaving the same way. Because we created this circle as like a 2 by 2 meters radius, it means like it's 4 meters. And the force is not enough. So if we look to this, we are not going to attract anything, because the particle is going to be, every single frame, they're going to be even further away from the center line. Okay, if we increase that, we're going to start seeing something, but like this, you see, the ones that are closer to the line, because the line is bent, so the ones in the right, they're going to be attracted. The other ones are still shooting. So let's reduce a bit the circle. We can do that just increasing the force, but I think it's going to be easier to visualize if we make the circle just smaller, like 1.3 radius. And now we're going to have this attracted to the line. And that's the fun part of this system, because it's kind of a bit of unpredictable, because you're simulating. Unless you have like tons of hours of simulating, you can already see in your mind what's going to happen. Otherwise, it's a big surprise, and we're going to get different forms just playing with these parameters. And in that part, it's totally endless. And that's what I want to show. My goal in this tutorial is not to show you how to do exactly that I did, but to imagine the possibilities that you can do with particles and the organic shapes, and something that would take so much time to visualize. And here you just change a few parameters and you have a totally different form. That's really great for creating a vase, organic form, these huts, these indigenous, fantasious houses, or different sculptures. Or it's totally endless. We can do like I don't know, like transportation, design, a lot of different cool things with that. So we're just playing with the parameters, and we can play with the ramp that define how much attraction it's going to have along this curve. So you see, like, look, this form, it's already passing out of the curve and wanting to come back, because there is inertia to the particles. So let's add a pop force. The pop force is another way of adding interesting to this. So I want to shoot them up, so in the positive y, just 0.5, and a bit of noise, like I want like a low amplitude, and I want a bigger swirl size and scale of the swirl. So it's the noise scale, and a bit less roughness. So let's see. You see, we're starting to have a different movement. The line are just dancing around, so that's really cool. And imagine how long it would take to create this manually, to draw all these lines and to create this very cool organic shape. So yeah, that's looking awesome. And we can keep playing with that for as much as we want. We can add another line to attract that. And just using a point drag is something like if the air has a density and it's going to affect the particles, so they're just not flying totally freely. In this case, I'm just using a point 2, and they have a different shape. You see, they take longer to go up, and with that they're just going to deform differently along this way. And because our line is not totally straight, we have a different behaviors of the particle after they reach some altitude. They start mostly the same, but then while they go upward, they're going to be closer or further away from the banded line. So that's going to give us a different cool look to it. So I think that's pretty good for now, and I just want to show you. We can come back and play with the parameters, but let's start adding geometry to this form that we got. So now we are in the DOP network, but that's just the simulation thing. We need to import that back to SOPs, and the way to do it is a DOP import. We need to get back our container. This is the mask, so we want everything that was stored in the container, the POP object, and pointed out also the DOP network. And we want to fetch geometry from DOP network. That means we want to search all the geometry inside that. The geometry data path, we're just going to write geometry. In this case, wouldn't need to do that because it's already going to bring the geometry. But in some case, if you add more things, more parameters and more attributes to your DOP network, you might want to specify that you want to bring just the geometry. Okay, so it's time dependent. So depending on what in the time, where in the time we stop, we're going to have a different form. And we can also have it animated with time. So that's really cool. I think that's great. 160 frames, and you see we have all these points going upwards, and the distance between them is more or less the same. So let's save this as geometry. We're just going to save these points, but I just want to save the current frame, so that's not going to be animated. But once we save this, we can change the DOP network again, and it's not going to affect that. We're going to bring as a new file. So let me save this in my Geo folder. Let's call this, I don't think we need to call this the RIP name. That means the name of the file that we're saving our project. Let's call this Particles Cabana 1 and save to disk. If we bring a file node, we're going to have now that we can just copy and paste the same path. Okay, so let me just do that. Great. And if I load the geometry, I'm going to have that. That's all the points, but it's not time dependent anymore. So we have, because we saved only the current frame. That's really good. But now let me show you something else. We are shooting particles every frame. So that means impulse activation means 1, means every frame we're shooting a particle. So if I do a $f equals to 1, it means that I'm only going to shoot when the frame is 1. So I just shoot one particle. So now if we visualize, we have this line of particles, that is the 36 particles that we're shooting upward. And they're doing the same path that they did before because we didn't change any of the forces that interact with these particles. So now if we have a look to the curve and change something, like we can even animate these parameters, and that's really cool. So we can have like up to the frame 100 a force like 0.8 in the sectional scale, and in the 129 we can change it to 4, so we have a very strong section scale. And let's see what we get. So after that, it's going to start sucking back to the path again, and we get a totally different shape. So, but the thing is that let's increase the length of the line to 5 so we can visualize better. And let's increase now the capture region force. Okay, so we have a line going higher. And let's see the simulation again and see what we get from that strength that's going upwards after the 129 frame. Yeah, they're going to keep going around the line. They're just doing this orbital movement because we also have this orbital force to it. But now that we shoot only one particle, you think, okay, now I got like just a few particles flying in the air. But if we use a trail node, and the trail is going to look to where this particle was 1 to 100 frames back. And if we look to 174 frames, or We didn't even have a need to put as much. If we put a 149 would be enough, but if you use more, it doesn't matter. They're just tracking back what this particle did in the past frames. And let's save this again to Cabana 2. Okay, let's copy and let's paste and let's see. We get an error. Okay, I think I forgot to save this. I just put I need to save to disk. Okay, so now let's reload the geometry and okay, we got it. Okay, so we have a different shape, and if you look to this, we have like both have a lot of points in a organized way, but they were generated in different ways. So the parameters for that, they're going to differ, because if we put an add node and instead of deleting the geometry, we want to connect them. So if we place polygons and by group, we're going to connect the whole geometry. In this case, we are adding all points, so they're all being connected. And you can work that way, it might work in some cases, but I want to connect them by an attribute. The attribute is the ID of the particle. Because in this first case, the Cabana 1, we have like a lot of particles. They don't have one ID for different lines. But in the other one, yes, the trail node, we have one path for each particle. So now we have these lines that's going across the whole geometry, and we're starting to get something out of that. So after the add node, let's see, we have a lot of points. I don't think we need to resample it. We have 5,000 points, I think that's good enough. Depending on the trail node, we can add more sub-steps to the trail, and it would add more particles. So let's add a sweep node, and let's add a round tube. So we're going to sweep this round tube around it, and let's reduce this to radius 0.05. If we put the stretch around turns, they're just going to have a better ending for that. And let's use the cap, single poly. Let's reverse the normal, and we have like this weird issue there. You see, it's kind of like after a while they're just flipped. But we can solve that going into the sweep node again and change the tab to the construction. Let me show you. Here in the construction, you can change the tangent and transform using curve point attributes. If we uncheck that, we don't even need to use the reverse node. The normals are correct. So yeah, you see, we have this shape now, and this is really cool. But I want to do something else. I want to use another sweep node. I want to approach this in a cool way using two different nodes for sweep. The first one, we're going to use just the columns and going to have like just 3. So from each line now, we have 3 lines following the same path. So we can change this, let's use like 0.03, no, let's bring back to 0.5. We can change that later to shape it. And let's do some full twists. You see how cool? Imagine that now we can sweep across these additional lines that we created. And this is the same way that you would do a rope, like in a sailboat or anyway. So now we can just, we need to go back and use the round tub. And you see how cool? That's really awesome. And now it's again, I know that I'm being repetitive here, but it's endless what you can do with that, because you can play with the parameters and make it thicker in some areas and make it thinner, and there is a ramp already in the sweep node that can do that. If I change now the first sweep node, I'm going to have like a thicker line. If I change the sweep node in here in the surface, I can activate the apply scale along curve, and you see we can play with that and have a different look to it. So now I'm having it thinner on the top and thicker in the bottom. If I change to cat move, it's going to be a different interpolation between the points, the control points. And here you see how much control we have and how cool we can play. I'm just showing you it in here, but that's of course is an artistic choice. you need to figure out what you want, and I'm just showing you a few of the tools that I use to create this cool organic form. So if we come to the first sweep node and change the radius, we're going to have like a different shape. And in the second one as well, we can increase a bit to close everything, we can open up a bit. So there is a lot of cool stuff that we can do with that. So if I change the full twist, I'm going to have more elongated lines, and so we can change the radius, we can change the number of ropes going up, we can change everything. But now I want to open a door, as if this is a tribal hut, a house or something. I want to open a door, and the best way to do this, instead of doing it after the sweep, we can delete the points before that. So it's much easier for Houdini to process. So let's do it using a bounding box. We can do an object as well, but for now it's faster to do this as a bounding box. I wanted my door to be like 2 meters, but the scale is a bit off in this hut. We can change that later and scale everything. For now, we can just choose the area that we want to delete the points. Now the entity is set to primitive, but we need to delete the points. So yeah, you see, there's no points now. And if we do that, we're going to have our opening there. And we can just play with the size of the bounding box to delete just another area and don't break the leg like that. Yeah, I think maybe even shorter than this and a bit smaller. I think we can add one more line for it. Maybe it's too open. Yeah, let's add one more line. Yeah, that's great. I think that's good. Let's open this. Yeah, awesome. You see, I'm doing this with a square that's just this box, but we could delete this in a more organic way that would fit artistically better this case, but I'm just showing you what you can do. So in the sweep node, you can also compute the UVs attribute. So if I use a quick shade, UV quick shade, we can just see that we have nice UVs along this. See, yeah, all the same UVs along the whole thing. You can do that, or you can compute it later. There is advantage and disadvantage in this. And in this case, it's going to be very repetitive, the texture along the whole thing, because it's just repeating the same UVs over and over and over again. So, okay, but let's use like that for now. This is not like a tutorial on texture and shading. I can do something later if you guys want. Please let me know in the comments below. So let's play with the parameters, and we can go back to any point in our system, change a few parameters, and we're going to have a totally different shape. So I want to add another pop force, and with another noise, increase the amplitude a bit, and maybe a force going down after a while. I don't know, in the Y, or maybe, let me think, we can try something. Let's put like a negative value, so it's minus Y. It's like a gravity force, but much lighter. The gravity would be minus 9.8. We're just using minus 1. And let's see, we can have like an after Y, like 162, 126. Let's add 0. And then after a few frames, 140, let's have it to minus 1 or minus 3. Yeah. So let's see how this, and it's so cool because it's unpredictable. I don't know what we're going to have now. So I'm just playing a bit with the parameters. Let's reset and play again, and let's keep playing to see what's going to happen. Okay, they're just going to fly, and they're just orbiting around the top. That's really cool. Look how organized they are now, because they just have this force of the curve setting in. The velocity of the initial velocity is already gone at that stage. I want to multiply the velocity by a constant value, so we have a stronger initial velocity. We can just multiply it by, I don't know, 2, double the velocity force, so we have a stronger starting point for the particles. So let's see the result. Okay, so here we have. Let's see what is this form doing. If we just do the trail. Now we just need to increase the trail length. Let's put like 500. In this case, I don't know, I think we can keep as 0.72 or around 1, it's enough. Let's save this as Cabana 3. Okay, awesome, save. Let's duplicate this. So let's add another file, let's duplicate the whole path, and let's change this to Cabana 3. And let's see the sweep. So we have a different result immediately. And look, it's unpredictable. We have already the opening there because it's a procedural bounding box that just placed in the world position. So it's cutting off the door for us. We have this knot, we have this opening because now the particles are getting a different attraction, a different force working on them. So we just got something different. So I want to do something with the other one. Let's have a different approach for this one. There's something else that we could do, but let me add a sphere, okay, and let's do a copy to points. If we do this, we're going to copy these spheres into the points that we have, okay. For now, they're going to be too big. Let's reduce the size of this sphere. I think 0.01, maybe 0.1 is too small, like 0.02, yeah, 0.01, I think it's good. Maybe even bigger. Okay, so yeah, around, yeah, we can change that because now something is happening here. We are adding these points, but if you look, every particle has the same scale. So every sphere has the same scale. And there is a nice way of doing this. We can work and create a randomization of the points into the system. So each point have an attribute that's going to define the size of the sphere or any object that's going to be copied onto it. So if we randomize this parameter that we're going to call p scale, like particle scale, we can have a different size for each copied object on that. So let's just use a Rango just to create this parameter. So it's a float because it's just a decimal number, and let's call this p scale. And the p-scale for now, let's put equal to 1. That means that everything is going to have the value of 1. So if we have a look, it's going to be exactly the same. So nothing changed. Okay, so every single particle has the value of 1. So that was what we had before, but we didn't have the parameter to define that. Okay, so if we look to the geometry spreadsheet, we're going to have like that. Now we have a lot of parameters. They came from the POP network, so we can delete a few attributes. We don't need all of them. So the POP network gave us age, air resistance, depth, force, a lot of things. We just need a few. So let's delete all. That's the and when you do this sign, I don't know how to say in English, but this is except. So we do the star, that means all, and then this different sign, I don't know what's the name, they just accept. So I want to delete all except the p, the normal, the age, and the velocity. So now I have the p scale there. You can see everything is 1, all the points are 1. And let's do something with that. Let's create a point VOP. So let's do a point VOP. And let's dive inside. I want to have like a linear difference between the particles in the bottom and the particles in the top. So let's use the age, because the particles in the bottom, they are older than the last ones, right? So we have like this, I'm just visualizing the color, but you see the black is just in the very initial part, and the top is very bright, and almost everything is white. That means the color range is from 0 to 1, okay? So the age of the particles are not 0 to 1. Let's check. If we go to the geometry spreadsheet and see the age, you see there in the beginning. So we see that it's coming from 0 to 6.62. So, and we visualize the color from 0 to 1. So we need to change using a fit range, 0 to 6.62 or 0 to 7 to 0 to 1. Now we have a gradient coming from the based on the age of the particle, giving us a color from from black to white, and all the gray tones between them. So the topmost particle, the topmost they are white and the bottom ones are black. So that's what we're doing now. So we are fitting and rearranging the range. When we normalize, we're bringing back to 0 to 1. Okay, so I want it to be 1 to 0. So I want to be black in the top and white in the bottom. Think like that. The particles that have a white value, they're going to be bigger than the ones that have a darker value. But I don't want to have a 0 at top. So let's give a 0.3. Yeah, so the minimum size is 0.3 and the maximum size is 1. We could increase the 1 to something else, something bigger like 1.5, but I prefer to work with 0 to 1. So in this case I don't want anything 0, but I don't want going over 1. And we can use just a multiply for that. But the fit range, now we are just visualizing the age into the color, but we don't want that. We want to export this as a multiplication of the p-scale. So I'm going to first import the p-scale attribute. Okay, that's a float, it's already there. And let's multiply it. So if we multiply our p-scale by this age, the normalized age, and plug it into the color, we're going to have the same thing because this p-scale is 1, right? Okay, so let me promote this parameter so we can control another multiplication on top of these two values. So here it is, so it's multiplying everything by 0. If I put like 1.3, now I'm getting a bigger scale, and we can control the size of our spheres by that. So let's see. What's happening now is that we are visualizing that in the color, but we need to export it back to p-scale. So we need to use a bind export. So let's copy the p-scale and let's add a bind export and let's paste it. So yeah, we're re-exporting all these transformations back to p-scale. And now you can see, look, we have smaller spheres on top and bigger ones in the bottom. And we can control that by a ramp, by multiplying it. And what I want to do, I'm going to add a ramp parameter so we can better visualize the changes that we want to do in the particles. So we don't actually need that the third multiplication there. We can just change it to spline ramp. And let me kill this extra parameter, delete node, and let's jump inside. And we can change that in the point of up node because the ramp is always there. So if I play with the parameters now, look, we're going to have a control on this. And now that we have these linear sizes coming from bottom to top, we can actually change everything now. We can have a very tiny top, we can go thicker and then go thinner again, and have the tips very thick, and playing with all that. I just don't want to have a 0 because it's going to disappear there. So I want to give a small value to it, yeah, like that. So that's really great. We're having another different way of approaching that and creating. But imagine that instead of having a sphere, imagine if you have like a rock. So let's change this to Polygon and change the frequency to, I don't know, 50. Maybe, yeah, too much. I think we can do less, like 25. Yeah, that's great. So let's use a mountain. The mountain node in Houdini is just to distort it, like we can add a noise to the points, to the position, and change. So let me get like a small scale. Yeah, I think that's good. So let's see. Oh, I think I did a mistake. Let me see. The thing is that we had a lot of points. And on top of that, we're having like this sphere with a lot of subdivisions. So it's a bit heavy, but it worked. Not ideal, but it worked. And let me see. Yeah, you see we have like this and it's repeating a lot. So we need to do a couple of things. First, we need to randomize the rotation of these rocks pasted on our copy to the points. And also reduce maybe the amount of the geometry just to make it lighter on the system. Let's do that. Okay. So let's randomize the rotation. Let's do an attribute, randomize. So we want to randomize the rotation. So let's do that. Now is randomizing the color, the CG, but we don't want that. We want to randomize the rotations. So, okay, let's see. We have a lot of primitives, 72 million, 260 million vertices. So let's reduce the frequency to something smaller, like 12. Now we have, it's not rotation, let's change the attribute orient. And instead of having, here's set value, but let's use direction or orientation. Yeah, this one. And let's increase to 4 dimensions. And here we have a rotation of that rocks along this. And we're using only one rock. We could use different geometry types to that. So I just want to show you different ways of creating geometry after that particle system that we created. So awesome, we have a different look. It's like if this hut was made with a different material, like before looked more like wood or bamboo or this. And let's bring the same delete node and let's plug this in the bottom there and let's open it. Yeah, you see, it's very procedural. We can just copy and paste from one to the other and we have the same opening all of the huts. So let's change a bit so we don't have it, because you see it's not eating, it's not deleting part of the geometry of the rocks. The reason for that is that we are deleting the point, and in this case every point is a full rock. So using this delete in this stage, we just deleted the points that the rocks are going to copy to. So let me find a good way of having the opening without having only one rock in the way. Yeah, like that. I think it's good. Again, I'm being very sloppy in this. If this would be a real project, that I would do a different opening for this door, something more organic, something more natural. And the way to do that is we can use in different ways. We can do a boolean, it's just going to be heavier to calculate. We can do deleting selected points and create a shape for that delete node. And there's a lot of different ways of accomplishing that. So that's really nice. We have now 3 different forms generated in different forms using the same particle system. So that's really good. So now what we can do, the other ones we already have UVs, right? This one we don't. What I can do here, I could generate UV for the rocks, but I just want to show you something different. I want to convert this to a VDB, sign distance field, and let's change this to the voxel size to 0.01. The great thing of Houdini Houdini is most of the tools is multi-threaded. So if you're a computer, you have like 16 cores, 10 cores, 32 cores, and 64 threads or whatever. Houdini, for many nodes, is going to use the whole threads. So if you do that in Cinema 4D, it just takes longer. You can't get the same resolution and calculate faster because single threaded. So in Houdini, it's really good to work with VDBs and these conversions. So we have, let's do like a smooth and let's merge them all together using a Gaussian. So we have a different form, see different look. We lost that rocky feel for individual rocks, but we gain a different form, like if we add like a mud on top of clay on top of that rock, and we have a different feel for that. The tips we have like thicker now, and the reason is that we can change anything on top of that and make it thinner, the tips, for example, but they're just going to calculate the whole VDB. So I want to change from auto update to manual, so we can work on that without recalculating a lot and do a few changes. And here, okay, let's change a bit. I want the chips to be a bit thinner, and yeah, the thicker the base, and just giving some interesting shapes to that. So yeah, now it's going to take a bit longer because it's going to calculate the copy to points, then it's going to calculate the VDBs, so just take a bit longer. It's going to convert to VDB, it's going to do the reshape thing, and yeah, see we have a toppy part. They look like they're disconnected, but I think with the VDBs we can start getting them merged together again as one single form. So yeah, there, like if we do a reshape, maybe 2, let's decrease a bit, okay, nice, and let's merge them. Yeah, look, cool, I like that. We got another form, another organic form that would be hard to manually shape this, or you can actually do it pretty fast using different methods. But the thing that you can create so many cool things from this shape and using a particle system, it's really amazing. Let me just reorganize so we see all of them together. Here is VDBs now, but I want to convert them back to polygons. So yeah, now is a very dense mesh, but if you use the adaptivity, it's going to see everything that's kind of flat is going to have like a single polygon, and everything that's rounded or there is a different change in the direction of the polygon is going to be more subdivided. So it's a good way of reducing the polygon count, and for that we can extrude to give some displacement with the texture in the end. So I think it's good to keep it light like that. And yeah, you see we have like these 3 different forms. They were created with the same particle system. They can be used in different ways for different style projects. And I want to do one last one in the end, just to show you a different thing, a different look, using the same thing. So let's do. I want to shoot all the particles again. Yeah, one every single frame. Actually, no, sorry. Let's put 1. So every frame we shoot a particle. And let's use the jitter scale that I showed you in the beginning that we put like none. So we just have like this crazy particle system. Oh yeah, you see they're just getting attracted in the end. I don't want that. So let's see, I think it's in the pop force. No, I think it's in here. Yeah, the section scale. We have it animated to 3 after a while. I want to reduce that. 0.8. Yeah. Let me play a bit with the settings. You see now the gravity, that is not the gravity, it's the force, the negative y force that we created. They are throwing the particles down. So let me play with the parameters a bit, and let me show you another way of having a different look for the geometry. So yeah, I like that. Let's see what we get. So now in the trail node, if we use the trail but we have a lot of particles, they're going to have like this cool look as a thinner kind of particle system. So we can change the trail increment, but I think if we get like a lower one, let's keep the length higher, and let's keep this tail increment. Now let's reduce the tail increment, and trail length, let's increase the trail length. I don't know, like 1,000. Yeah, that's really cool. So you see we have a different system now. So let's now save this as Cabana 4 and save to disk. Yeah, and let's bring it back. Let's call this Cabana 4. Yeah, let me see. Okay, I want to delete the attributes. So the best thing is to delete this attribute before we save to this, so we save space in our storage. So in this, and before the wrap output, but we can do it now. It's just points, it's not very heavy. Like we have 500,000 points in this case. Nothing like too crazy. And yeah, you have a different shape. Look at the base of that. It's just like this pointing downward, like some arrows pointing down. Like it's a different look. So let's create a delete node so we have the same opening for the door. And now what I want to have, I want to add again. Let's see, let's add the geometry. You see, now we have a different system using the IGs, but we have so many particle IGs. That is something crazy. And let's, not this sweep, I think I just want to have like a round tube and make it really thinner. Much thinner than this. That you think. For that, what I want is to have like a very thinner structure, and because we have so many lines, I think they will work fine. So let's visually decide. Yeah, you see? Yeah, like that. Even thinner than that. Let's do it thinner. Yeah, like this. 0.01. Yeah, look, cool. I have something totally different. I love the top part. Yeah, that would be really hard to model, to manually model this, and it's awesome. So we can actually play now and put one inside of the other and have so many different results. So I did this render that you see in the beginning, playing a bit, just throw a texture from Quixel Megascans. If you mix them together, you get even more interesting shapes. So yeah, let's have a look in the render again. That's really cool. So I use different textures, some more towards wood, the other one more like a clay, mud, rocky look. And I didn't put a lot of effort, I didn't do much. I just wanted to show you guys the possibilities and to have this, to visualize the different styles and the different looks, and how cool to create a whole village using this technique. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this. So if you didn't yet, please subscribe. I'm going to keep posting videos with these cool tutorials, things that sometimes I post things that more in-depth tutorial that I go the whole project all the way to texturing. Sometimes just a few tips and tricks and different ideas, different workflows. So let me know if you guys want to see something specific. I already have in my site, cgimagine.com, a lot of freebies and full courses, and also some tools that, like a tree library, an Ocean HDA Ocean plugin for Houdini and Redshift. So there's a lot of cool stuff there. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you in the next one.